Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Valenti, joined today by a New York sports broadcasting legend. She spent 23 years working at the MSG networks, notably covering the Islanders and the Devils. These days, she owns her own home decor store, The Post, in Westport, Connecticut. The one and only Deb Placey. Deb, it's such an honor to be talking with you today.
It was so nice to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, hey, it's just like I said, just such an honor to be talking, with you and someone who's just had just so much experience, in the world of sports broadcasting and in the biggest media market in the whole nation.
So, you mentioned the big city and being in New York, but I did start as a PA for Sports Center in Bristol, and then to be on the air, I went to 4 small markets to get some experience and get started. And I was the weekend sports anchor in Marion, Illinois, which was a small ABC affiliate. And then I went to Iowa, and we were a one-man band, carried my own equipment, had to learn how to shoot. I knew how to edit. I edited all my own pieces when I was in Illinois. So used to have to carry a light stand with you and focus on it, and then replace the light stand with myself and do my stand-ups. And I shot a lot of games, and would run back to the studio and edit it, and then did some anchoring on the weekends. And then I got a job in Providence, Rhode Island, and that was really more big league. I covered in Providence, we covered all the Boston teams. So I covered the Celtics and the Red Sox and a little bit of the Bruins and that kind of thing. And then my biggest job was I got to Miami, and I was the weekend sports anchor there and a weekday, and a reporter during the week. And I covered the Dolphins, and the Panthers were a brand new hockey team. Wayne Huizenga had owned the Dolphins, and then he started the Panthers as an expansion franchise. And the Miami Hurricanes went to the national championship game, and I covered all the college football. And then ESPN offered me the chance to come back to the East Coast. I got married, and I was one of the original anchors on ESPN2 when it first started, with Stuart Scott, may he rest in peace, Kenny Mayne, Susie Culber, Bill Pito, Keith Olbermann, an amazing experience. And I was there for 2 years, but really wanted to get back to doing more traditional sports. And MSG, Madison Square Garden Network in the city, offered me a chance to come and do games. So I didn't have to move, but I started working at MSG, and then I was there 25 years.
Yep, and then the rest was history, right? In the Big Apple.
Exactly.
Yep, absolutely. So now I kind of want to talk, a bit more kind of about your background and stuff, because I read they grew up in St. Louis.
I did, yes.
You went to many Cardinals games.
Yep.
Now I am a Cubs fan, so I'm not really too fond of the Cardinals. Um, but obviously Cardinals, just an amazing franchise, and St. Louis is a great baseball town. And you said that's kind of where your love of sports began, going to those games. So would you mind just talking about those memories?
Well, as I always say, the Cardinal baseball in St. Louis is a part of the fabric of everyday life. Like, the Cardinals were playing, and you had Jack Buck on the radio or Joe Buck on TV. You knew what the score was or who was playing that day or that night. You were going to the game, or you caught up with it later, but it was sort of an everyday thing. And I just loved it. I come from 4 sisters, all girls, and we all played softball. And my dad coached third base, and we learned about baseball early. And so that was really where my love of sports came in. And I always wanted to be a reporter, but was when I got to college at U of A, your other rival, that professor who said, women in sports is really an avenue right now. A lot of news directors and networks are actively looking for women. It was just at the very beginning when women were covering sports, and I would direction. So I did a little bit of news here and there, but ended up being very fortunate that I started in sports, and really turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me, because news turned very tabloidy back in those days. And it was kind of a tough cover. And it's also kind of depressing. It's also very serious and important. But I just ended up being able to do sports, which was a love and exciting, and took me to wonderful places. And I saw so many amazing games over the year, and, an amazing moments, that I'm so glad I ended up doing sports, for sure.
Yep. I agree, and I mean, just getting into sports is just such a fun industry to be in. Because you get to be a part of so many memorable moments, and you never know what can happen next.
Well, sports brings people together. Even in this age of
Mm.
live streaming and cable bundling, it's still appointment television. It's the only thing you need to see live. Now you can watch 7 episodes in a row, of something on Netflix in the comfort of your own home, but you can watch it at your convenience. And live sports is still king. It's still something that brings communities together. I mean, I still remember when the Cardinals won the World Series, and you go to the parade with your friends and your family, and I still remember that as one of my favorite memories of growing up. So, even the lovable Cubs, brought Chicago together all the years of
Yeah.
losing before they
Yep.
ever won. It's really like, turn to the sports page for your entertainment and your happiness. And it is something that you can that really spans the generations. I mean, we take our daughters to games. Our oldest daughter just became a Mets fan from the very beginning, and she follows that team every single day. I covered the Yankees more at MSG because we had the rights for the first 5 years. So I knew more of the Yankees, and she still was a Mets fan just all on her own. So and we share, she'll still text our family if someone gets traded or if they've lost or won. We watch games together all the time. And, it's just such a bonding experience for family and friends. And it still has stood the test of time, the excitement of sports being live.
Yep, I absolutely agree. But being a Mets fan, it's got to be tough. It's got to be tough.
Well, it's been up lately, but it still brings her a lot of joy, and we still love to go to games, and she watches them win or lose. She still enjoys it.
Yep, absolutely. Now let's talk about your days in a college at a school I'm not going to mention. Now you go attend the University of Arizona, my school, Arizona State's biggest arch nemesis. But you majored in journalism. What made you want to go to Tucson for college?
So I don't want this to offend anybody at Arizona State, but I wanted to go to a college town where sort of the town revolved around the school and the sports, and Phoenix was a really big city. Uh, no, my, one of my younger sisters, one of my ended up coming to Arizona after me as well. And my parents came out from St. Louis so often, they ended up buying a house in Scottsdale. And so they lived there for 30 years. So as I grew up and came back to visit, and we spent holidays and that kind of thing, we always were in Phoenix. So I didn't get back to Tucson as much after I graduated from there. But I just remember visiting in February of my senior year in high school and got off the plane, and it was 75 degrees, and walked around Old Main and the campus in a mile around of palm trees. And I was like, okay, I'll be going here. So I just fell in love with the campus and the program, and ended up going.
Yeah. And I just want to say that I definitely agree with your point about Tucson is definitely more of a traditional, college town. And being here in Phoenix, things there's almost so much around here that I think that that there's not as much campus culture really at ASU as opposed to a U of A. And
Right.
I've been there. I've been to Tucson a couple times now, and I can definitely say that there's a lot more culture there, and I guess more school spirit, you can say.
Right. But regardless, I had an amazing experience in college. I was in a sorority, and those girls are still my friends. We have a girls' weekend 20 plus years later all the time. I still talk to them and see them. They're some of my closest friends. I watch Arizona. I mean, over the years, the Final Four and the and the NCAA tournament, from winning it all to all those first round losses. They're my team. Our first dog was named Loot. I loved Loot Olson. I got to interview him a couple times. Definitely a highlight for me. He used to laugh and say, "Oh, Deb, I have so many former students who have said they've named their kids after me, but you're the only dog." So I treasure those days. I had an amazing experience. The radio television department at U of A was a little bit ahead of its time. I know that with Walter Cronkite and Al Michaels, ASU has an amazing program. But the RTV department at U of A had all the equipment, and I practiced and I learned how to edit and be on the air, and I learned quite a bit. There was a lot of hands-on, which back in those days there weren't a lot of schools that had that. Now it seems like everybody has that, and journalism's come a long way. But I really had a lot of good experience. I took a lot out of my years there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And, no, I'm curious if the U of A journalism school, if they ever asked you to like come back as I guess like a professor of broadcasting, would you go back and try to like ever teach some students?
Oh, absolutely. I would love to. Although I don't probably have as much patience as so many professors and teachers do. Uh, so thank God for all the teachers out there.
Oh yeah.
But I got a lot of advice. And even one thing I would say to your peers is taking journalism classes in the hands-on is very important. But I always tell young people when I talk to them is learn as much as you can. I mean, I minored in econ. You can minor in anything. You can take classes in anything. And, the smarter you are, the better reporter you are. So I would say absorb and learn in any field. If you're interested in technology, if you're interested in art history, anything you learn while you're in college will make you a better reporter. The stories that you cover, the more well-rounded background you have and the more knowledge you have, just serves you well. It's not all about just stats or sports, because you'll learn that as you go along. But I would just encourage anyone who's in school and wants to be a reporter, because at the end, whether you're reporting or anchoring, it's all asking questions and being curious and connecting with the game or the person and really finding the story. Like when you're at a game, you have to find the story. What's your lead? What's the turning point? And all of that just comes from a well-rounded knowledge. And I always tell young people, just absorb and learn as much as you can because you will always use it.
Yes. I definitely agree with everything you said, and you kind of have to be I guess you could say a sponge, to just
Yeah.
absorbing all the information.
Yeah. Don't feel like any classes you take are ever not going to matter in your career. If you end up doing sports broadcasting or you end up being a reporter, you will use the knowledge you get from other um, subjects a lot. You will. And so, get as much out of it as you can.
Yes, definitely. So now I kind of want to talk about, some of your time at ESPN, like you mentioned earlier, and specifically, I kind of want to know more about your time with ESPN2, because you were there kind of at the beginning of that whole network. Just kind of, would you mind just talking about your overall time, with ESPN2 at that time?
It was a crazy experience. It was a crazy time. It was at the beginning of networks trying to branch out. ESPN was trying to take advantage of its brand, and X Games and those secondary sports were just booming and just starting. And it was a learning process for ESPN. I mean, we made a lot of advancements, a lot of mistakes. It was a lot of experimenting, what works, what doesn't. I think the biggest thing that ESPN as a company, and I know for sure, just speaking for myself, um, learned was there's the humor has to come organically. Like people love sports, they don't necessarily want to. It's a serious thing for them. It's not like there was somewhat of a Sports Center became super successful with these brilliant anchors. I mean, if you even think back to Craig Kilborn and Rich Eisen and the Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann. You can't teach funny. It's very organic. Those guys were brilliant and they made sports so entertaining. But if you set out to make a highlight funny or entertaining just for the sake of trying to be different, which ESPN2 spent a lot of time, we thought we had to be different, or you could just watch ESPN. And it just doesn't always work. I mean, and I kept that with me always as a sportscaster. So if something on the field as a highlight is hilarious, go with it, but you can't try to make everything funny. And people love their sports too much. They're not going to, they don't want to be made fun of. So it was a real learning experience. It ended up not being sustainable to try to be irreverent all the time. And ESPN learned that very quickly and transitioned to just having another platform for all their live games. And so it was a huge learning experience for me. It got me back to ESPN where I'd started. Again, some of the people there are the most talented in the business, and to talk about being a sponge, just the producers that were so brilliant that I got a chance to work with, and my fellow co-anchors. I still talk to and email Susie Colber. I see Bill Pito all the time. We ended up working together at MSG for 10 years. My husband was at ESPN 37 years, never on the air, always as a producer and executive. It was, just to be around those people and the imagination and the light years ahead that we've come from lipstick cameras and point of view and the first down line and scores. I mean, in the upper left that, people thought Fox was crazy for having the score bug in all the time, and now you can't live without it. So it was a great time. And then in the end, it turned out not to be for me. I wanted to go back to covering the Yankees and Mets and NFL football and not the irreverent sports. But for skiers and snowboarders and X Games, it's a huge franchise. It wasn't for me, but that, doesn't, but it still has a huge audience. But that's why eventually I went back to New York.
Yep. And wow, of course, you were at ESPN too. You mentioned this earlier, but you got to work with with just another sportscaster who's one of my all-time favorites, the late great Stuart Scott.
Yeah.
What was it like, getting to work with him? What are some of your memories?
So I would just say that I give Stuart a ton of credit for the confidence to be himself. And what I was going to say was the players loved him, coaches loved him, because they recognized that he was real, and he he connected with them. And so that was a big piece of it too. They opened up to him and loved seeing him when he was out at games and everything. So sorely missed. He fought, cancer so bravely, but he was definitely one of a kind. There will never be another. I would say there will never be another.
Yep, absolutely. And I think something, that you were alluding to, I think it's so great about him is that he was so authentic, and he was himself. Yep. And I think that's so important. If you're going into broadcasting, you just gotta be yourself, be authentic.
That's an interesting thing you say, because that is the most important thing about being on the air in whatever role you're in, play-by-play analyst, sideline reporter, anchor, is to be yourself. But it's not easy to do. You would think it would be so easy, but it takes a real comfort level on the air to then be yourself. So that's really it sounds like it's so funny, or seems so counterintuitive to say it takes work to be yourself, but it's really just about being confident enough and comfortable enough in your own skin and your own shoes. And when the red light goes on, I mean, some people are supernatural, but very few. I mean, almost everybody gets butterflies. It's not the most natural thing to do, to be on the air and talking to, sometimes you're talking into the camera. You're not even talking to another person. When you are an analyst or on a set with others, you are at least talking to other people. But it takes some work to be natural, to be yourself. But it's the key. So the more reps you get, the more you can do it, the more comfortable you are, the more yourself you can be.
Yep, definitely. So now let's kind of talk about your great career that you had at MSG. And as you mentioned, you got to cover the Yankees dynasty in the 90s, which is so awesome. So of course you were covering the Yankees, probably more than the Mets, you said. And then now your daughter is a Mets fan, and of course in 2000 there was the Subway Series, Mets Yankees in the World Series. So I got to ask, what was that experience like, covering that event, being in this divided Big Apple?
Well, I remember it well. It was great to cover, but unfortunately, the lasting memory is that it wasn't that competitive. I mean, the Mets won a game, but the Yankees just were a stronger team, and they had all that experience. So it wasn't much of a series. It was disappointing. Other series were better. I was a rookie, I always say, at MSG the first year that Derek Jeter was a rookie. So we had a wonderful relationship all those years. We started at the same time. We had the Yankees for those first 4 World Series championships. Joe Torre was awesome to cover. he's just not only a warm, genuine guy, but he had been in the media, so he understood the part that the media plays. And so he was always so generous with his time and his insight. It was a wonderful time to cover them. There were great personalities. They were exciting games. And it was a first for New York in that the Yankees hadn't won or been good in so long. There was a whole different generation winning for the first time. And so I think the Mets fans enjoyed being a part of that ride in 2000 and felt like they'd get back again soon and were happy to be a part of it. But and it was really mostly a Mets town and a National League town until the Yankees sort of stole it back in the 90s when they started winning all the time. But it was as if these New Yorkers had never seen a baseball team win before. It was such a unique experience with that group, the core four, and Andy Pettit and the Paul O'Neill and Bernie Williams and lovable Yankees that really came up through the system, and Mariano Rivera. There was no one on that team that not to like. They were very lovable characters, even though they were intense. There were no like sort of villains like a Reggie Jackson or villains like a Barry Bonds today, or yeah, they were very lovable. So it was a great time in the city, and it was as if these, it hasn't been the same since, and they haven't been in a long time, you forget. But just an awesome part of my time at MSG was the beginning with the Yankees.
Yep. Yeah. I bet. Just such a dominant team, and it's crazy how it really, in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that long ago. And then especially you look at how the Yankees are doing this year, and yeah, they're there, and it's definitely a far cry from those days.
Yeah, for sure.
So so then from there, how did you end up getting on the stuff with the Islanders?
Okay. So remind me, what did you watch growing up hockey wise?
Right. So I grew up probably mostly. I think it was when you were mostly covering the Devils, back in
Okay.
the like the 2010s. That's when I really got into hockey.
So it's a very easy explanation in that we had the rights at MSG to all the New York teams, and then the Yankees formed their own network. They formed the S Network, and then the Mets followed suit and formed their own network in SNY, and we were left with all the winter sports. So one of our coordinating producers, who actually was with the Big Ten and the Pac-12 network and passed away recently, Leon Schweier, who for many, many years produced all those great Yankee games all summer long. He came to me and said, "How would you like to do the Islanders?" And I was like, "I'm in," because we had, those were the four teams we had left to host. So it was, the Islanders, Rangers, Devils, and Knicks. So I was blessed to get the Islanders, and I did them for 10 years. Again, Peter Laviolette, I think one of his first years was my first year. They were really good. They went to the playoffs. It turned out to be the best sport to cover. I still think it's the most exciting sport live. The players are awesome, super friendly and approachable, and love to talk hockey. Don't mind doing the interviews. A lot of interesting characters. It became an international game. You're meeting these wonderful young guys from all over the world that have various backgrounds, that come from different parts of the world. Nothing like the Stanley Cup playoffs. I ended up working for the NHL Network and doing a lot of national stuff for about 5 or 6 years. Got to cover all the playoffs and the Stanley Cup finals. And so it was an awesome time for me. I got to know Gary Bettman and the league very well, and got to do winter classics and those big events. The draft and all-star games, and it turned out the last 15 years of my career I did mostly the NHL.
Yeah, and just hockey. I'll be honest, hockey is my favorite sport. It's
Okay.
so fun. It's just such fast pace, and it's exciting. I just love it. So I bet it. For you, it was so much fun to cover and report on.
Yeah, it was a blast. I love it. I wouldn't trade a minute of it. Amazing travel. I mean, Vancouver and Edmonton and
Mm.
all the big cities. Even, we loved going to Pittsburgh. The Sidney Crosby teams were so great. And just anywhere. We got to go to Florida every year, the California teams. I mean, it was then Minnesota got a team, and it was awesome to go up there where they love their hockey so much, traveling to Canada. And all those years. I just loved it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I should ask, as a Stars fan, I should ask, well, do you have any fun times you had in Big D when you were down in Dallas?
In Dallas?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And any
Oh
fun
yeah.
memories there?
Um, well, Dallas is everything in Dallas I always think is big.
Yeah.
Everything is like big, everything is like giant size. So the crowds were big. This arena, the whole downtown area where Mark Cuban and the Mavs are, and they share that arena. It's big, it's crazy. They love their hockey, they love their sports. We always loved going down there for games. It seemed like we were down there a lot when the Mavs were there, and we would get to go watch an NBA game. But yeah, I love those times going to Dallas. It always seemed like, if you go back and look, Dallas and the Devils played a lot of overtime games. We just seemed to have a lot of exciting games when we were down there for some reason.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then, and I mean, this was in 2000, but then there was the Stanley Cup between the Devils and the Stars,
Well,
and that
Jason
was,
Arnott and the whole history between the two sides,
yeah.
they just have a lot of history together. So the matchups were always big and important. And there just seemed to be something about those two teams when they got together. They were always great games.
Yep, absolutely. Now it's interesting because again, you being from St. Louis, as I understand, you also like the Blues. So were there ever any like
Well,
internal
I was thrilled for the
conflicts?
Blues when they won the Stanley Cup. I felt, yeah, it was a part of my growing up. They were never that good, but the way it brought the city together and how many people were into it, I think it was really good for the league because it sort of woke up the town. Just
Hmm.
like, a team that, like Pittsburgh that had been quiet for so many years. And then they went through Mario Lemieux and Sidney Crosby. They've had an exciting team every year. But for like a place like St. Louis, there were so many loyal Blues fans over the years, but it woke up fans that didn't know they were fans before. It brought a whole new swath, thousands of people to the Blues culture. A little bit like, when the Kings won, a whole new generation of fans found hockey and found the NHL when the Kings were winning. That kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet it would probably be fun for you whenever the Devils or Islanders would play the Blues in St. Louis. You could, kind of go back home.
Yes, I got to go back home. My sisters and husbands and kids, my nieces and nephews would all come to the games. I got to go home and stay at the house where, with my parents. I would go, visit family. I loved my trips to St. Louis. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. And now I have to bring this up. I'm sure this is probably a very memorable run you got to cover. The New Jersey Devils run to the Stanley Cup in 2012. It's one of my all-time favorite Stanley Cup runs with the Adam Henrique goal against the Rangers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what was covering that whole run like?
It was totally unexpected, so it made it that much more fun and that much better. Berger was obviously at the end of his career, but he still had it. He was awesome to cover. My daughter, our oldest daughter, rode horses growing up, and we got a young horse from Europe. And when they're really young, he was only 3, you get to name them. So we named him Brodeur. So we had a horse named Brodeur. We called him Brody. And Marty used to love to keep track of when he won. And I'd show him pictures, and he always, would keep up with my daughter's riding of Brodeur. But yeah, it was a special group. Zach Parise was awesome to cover. Adam Henrique was, my favorite rookie. I got to know his mom really well. You get to know their parents. I think because the NHL does those moms trips and the dads trips, you get to know their parents, and the families were around a lot. So you just get some really well, and his parents really well. They came a lot, but you go on the mom's trip with them and you just bond with them. And so that run, Pete DeBoer was great to cover. Super, super smart, fabulous hockey mind, has success everywhere he goes. He was awesome to cover. The games were exciting. The hockey is just so great when it's, looking for that little black puck to go in and cross the line with, 10 huge guys on a small sheet of ice. There's nothing like it. So it was great with LA and back and forth. And even though they lost, it was still a great experience.
Oh, I bet. And now in 2018, of course, you left MSG to go work for the NHL. I'm curious, was that a tough decision to make, or was it kind of like, oh yeah, I'm ready for the next chapter?
No, I was my youngest daughter was being a senior in high school, soon to be I was going to be an empty nester. I got to stay home and enjoy her whole senior year, um, and be present. A lot of things I missed over the last 25 years of travel. It was an awesome time. Podcasting was new. I absolutely loved the long form interview. It was my favorite type of work I think that I'd ever done, other than like live games or playoffs. It was just the getting to know the executives, the general managers, the celebrities that we did on that podcast. Even just as an example today, one of the women that I had on the podcast, we did a lot of team owners, was Jessica Pegula's parents. She's now a tennis star and playing in Wimbledon, but her parents, Kim and Terry Pegula, own the Buffalo Sabres. So we had her on. She's a big part of the ownership group with the Buffalo Bills, obviously, and the Sabres. And her mom was the most interesting story. And I even talked to her about being a sports parent. And her daughter was up and coming from near where Chris Everett is in Boca Raton, and she turned into this big tennis star. And I got to know her early on, and just the different people you interview. The owner of the Vegas Knights was in the military and earned, I don't know, something like started betting on, not betting, I shouldn't even say betting, started investing in Wall Street from his dorm room at West Point and made his fortune doing that when he was like 18 years old, ended up buying the Vegas Golden Knights. I mean, you meet the most interesting people. So for me, that long form interview in the podcast was just totally different, and I really loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in case for anyone watching this, who wants to know what it is, it's the NHL Executive Suite podcast, and I love the interviews you did on it, like talking with people like Gary Bettman and Lou Lamoriello, just these great hockey minds, and you're asking great questions, getting these great insights. So yeah, I mean, I would love to get more episodes in the future. So,
I need to know some of these people on a personal level. I mean, Lou Lamoriello was at Providence when Rick Pitino was there, and he hired Rick Pitino, I think, to be the basketball coach, because Lou ended up being the athletic director at Providence as well as coaching. And then he shared a locker with John Thompson, the old Georgetown basketball coach. I mean, things when he was a player, like things you would never know, that you have a chance to talk to some of these really impressive owners and general managers and executives about their personal life, is super interesting to me.
Yep, I definitely agree. So now, as we were kind of talking about this earlier, kind of beforehand, but like you said, you have your own home decor store, The Post, and I really want to talk about this because I think it's so cool, know that you're running your own business, got this whole cool freaking store. So, would you mind talking about how The Post came to be and just really what the story is behind the store?
Okay, so I was doing the podcast, and COVID happened. So sports shut down. I thought this is a good time not to go back into sports casting. I took a 2-year term as co-president of Pink Aid, which is a 501c3, a breast cancer organization foundation, raised money, worked as a volunteer, for 2 years among all volunteers. Just sort of a life. It was an organization that raised money to pay bills, electric bills, rent, car payments for women going through chemotherapy and breast cancer treatment. So I did that for 2 years, and then I was looking to do something. And my best friend that I grew up with in St. Louis had a home decor store for like 10 years. And in like a flash, a minute, we decided to go into business together and partner on a store similar to hers, but in Connecticut. It's 2 minutes from my house. I'm sorry, I'm sitting in my car. This is like my home away from home. I get here in 90 seconds, far cry from a 2-hour commute to the Prudential Center in Newark and New York City traffic. A 3 a.m. flight to Edmonton is a little different. My commute is very short. I work with all women, which is funny because for so many years I worked with all men. So it's very different. it's a big learning curve. I've enjoyed a different side of it. The guys used to make fun of me, like we'd have an off day in Montreal and I would go look at fabrics and furniture. That was always something I loved to do. So when I stopped being a sportscaster, I took advantage of my passion for it to have it become my job. But I don't have a boss anymore, which I love. But I don't know anything about Big Boss. I had producers telling me what to do, but now I have to figure out how to do that. I'm not very good boss. I'm mostly friends with the girls who work for us. So it's totally different. I miss some aspects of sportscasting, but my daughters are both in it now. They're not on the air, but our older daughter, Madeline, is in charge of product placement for College Game Day, and she has been with ESPN for 3 years. And our youngest just got a job at the new Forum in LA. She went to USC, University of Southern California in LA. And she just moved out there, just graduated, and she's working for the Forum. And she did an internship her senior year for the Lakers. Had an amazing experience for partnership. So we watch sports every night, still keep up with it. Not as much as I used to, but I don't have to miss it because it's still a big part of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's awesome that that your kids are going into sports as well, kind of carrying on the legacy, you could say.
Yes, they are. More their dad's legacy. Like I said, my husband was behind the scenes for 37 years at ESPN. So he's been a big part of their interest in it also.
Yeah, yep, definitely. Now, if there's anyone watching who wants more information on the Post, where can they find that information? And just kind of what all sorts of products, do you guys sell there?
We do furniture, art, mirrors, frames, candles, gifts. We have a baby section. We do a lot of baby clothes and gifts. We do some women's clothes, some jewelry. You can find us on Instagram. I still post something about sports once in a while. It's the Post CT, which stands for Connecticut CT. So it's the Post CT on Instagram. And come visit us if you're ever in New York or Westport or Connecticut. Come see me.
Well, hey, that's awesome. And if I'm ever in that area, I will definitely come by.
Oh, you have to. Yes, come see us. I so appreciate you having me on. And you absolutely can. I also have a personal Instagram. It's Deb K. Placey. If anyone wants to chat or have questions about sportscasting or journalism, you have any, if there's anything I can ever do, make an introduction, chat with you, give you any advice. You don't have to take it, but please feel free to send me a message on Instagram. I'm so happy to chat.
Well, hey, Deb, that is, that's so awesome. Like truly. And I think it's great, that they're willing to, they're willing to help out, the future and aspiring sports broadcasters. I think that's something that's just so awesome.
Yes. So reach out. I'm happy to get back to you.
Yep.
Now I think I have to go back to work.
Well, Deb, thank you so much for coming on the show. Just truly an honor, like I said, to be able to talk with you today, talk with you about your amazing career. Just, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good luck to all of you. And thank you so much. You did a great job. You asked very good questions. Thank you.